Hello, everyone. This is your third session in your step-by-step journey in performing very good research and in becoming research professionals by the will of God. So last two sessions we talked about the research question in case of a systematic review and how important the research question is, and it's basically the first thing that you need to decide about. And we also talked about that systematic review is a form of research. In this session, we are going to talk about the actual steps of performing a systematic review and the basic features when you are writing a systematic review report. And I'm going to tell you why I am talking about such a subject very early in your journey in doing a systematic review, even though it looks like you're going to write your report only when you have finished. So, first thing, it's always very good to know your way, to know the point that you want to reach, to know all the steps that you should go through. And here are the 7 basic steps of performing a systematic review, plus or minus a meta-analysis. First of all, and as I told you before, asking or formulating a good question is your primary step and your most important step. And you should be able to know whether this question answers or fills a gap in the literature, whether there are enough studies that you can work on, primary studies, and whether this question has not been answered by a systematic review in the recent literature, like, for example, last year. And the golden rule tells you that if you have new studies that are around contain 20% of the patients in a systematic review, which is already there, then perhaps you can embark on a new systematic review. And some systematic reviews, they call them even the growing reviews because they keep growing as the time passes, because new studies keep accumulating and every time you'll be updating your systematic review. After you formulate your question, you can use this question to build your search strategy, as we say. You look at the components or the concepts in your question, and you look into the synonyms of each concept. And from these will form the building blocks of your search strategy. And I will talk about the search strategy in a separate session. Then, after searching the literature, you get some studies. Sometimes they are hundreds, sometimes they are thousands of studies. Usually, what you get is a title or a title and an abstract. Then you need to select among those studies according to well-defined inclusion and exclusion criteria that are decided based on your question in the first place. So deciding your question will dictate the inclusion exclusion criteria, or which studies you are going to include and which studies will not be relevant to your systematic reviews. So will be the third stage, or the stage of study selection. And again, I will elaborate in a separate session about study selection. Um, I don't know if I've said this before, but as you can see, systematic reviews they are a form of secondary research. They are based on primary studies. So if these primary studies are of good quality, building them together, adding the results together is going to get you something nice. However, if these primary studies, these individual studies that you are adding together are not good quality studies, then what happens is what we say, garbage in, garbage out. So bad study and bad study and bad study, all together, they give you a very big bad systematic review. So it's very important to know how to appraise the studies. So you need, if you are doing a systematic review on a randomized control trial, you need to understand how to appraise, how to judge the quality of a randomized control trial. If you are including observational studies, it becomes even more difficult because it is more difficult to appraise observational studies. However, by reading and reading so many studies, and by reading about research methodology, and by actually performing multiple reviews, you become an expert in appraisal as well. Then, along with the appraisal, you're going to extract data. You're going to get out the data you are looking for. Then you are going to summarize this data. And we call this a form of synthesis because you are synthesizing the building blocks together. Here, you are trying to build something new out of your systematic review. If you can do that in a statistical way, in a quantitative way, we call this meta-analysis. However, sometimes you cannot do this meta-analysis in a statistical way, so you simply do what we call a narrative synthesis. And at the end, this is the most important part. You are going to report, you are going to publish. So when you write a report, writing your publication is a form of reporting. So perhaps it is very important from the very first moment to know what this report looks like. Like any other published research article, the systematic review will consist of basic subtitles, starting with the title of the research itself and the abstract. Then there will be a background section. Then there will be the methods section where you describe your methods. And by the way, the methods section is almost the most important thing because if you describe it well, then you have done your work in a good way. If you have bad method, nobody will accept your publication. However, if the results are not written in a good way, you can rewrite them, no problem. You can even repeat the statistical analysis. If discussion is not done in a good way or not written in a good way, you can always repeat it. You can get more references. However, methods, your methods section is the one that tells whether this study has been done in the correct way. So like any other research study, these are the elements of the report, but there are things that are peculiar to systematic reviews. And perhaps one of them is the prisma. The prisma diagram. As you can see, this prisma diagram, it is a cornerstone of any systematic review report. It describes how you searched and selected your studies. So it lists the sources of the studies, as you can see, identified studies via databases and identified studies via other methods. And there will be perhaps thousands of studies in the first box. I'm going later on to show you many examples of these. Perhaps there will be thousands of studies here, but then many of these are not even eligible. They are not suitable. So you're going to kick them out, or maybe you're not going even to select them. Then some studies remain, but then you screen them again according to their full text, because the first round of screening is by viewing or reading the title and the abstract. Okay, then you get the full text of the remaining studies. Perhaps you end up with 50 studies, with 60 studies. Okay, so you start reading the full text of these studies. By reading the full text now, you can decide that some more studies will be excluded. They are not even suitable. They are not answering your question. They do not fit the eligibility criteria. Some fewer studies, even fewer studies now remain. Now you are going to assess again at multiple stages. Perhaps the first stage is the stage of the title, then the stage of the abstract, then you screen the full text, and finally you end up with the studies that are going to go into your review and are going to be subjected to data extraction and to critical appraisal. So this is your prisma, okay? Before talking about this figure, what we call it the force plot, I'd like to show you quickly a systematic review report, which is I consider a very good one. So the first feature is the Prisma diagram, the one I described right now. Now, you have three sets of tables or three types of tables in a systematic review. First table is the table of study characteristics. Now, for each study, as you can see here, here is the first author and the year. This we call it the study identifier. So each study has a row in this table. And for each study, we're going to list some study characteristics. This might be slightly different from one review to the other. However, basically speaking, you have to describe the population, like the number of patients in each study, like the number of males and female patients in your treatment arm and the control arm, perhaps the age of the participants. And this describes this is a systematic review about fracture. So it includes patients with fractures. So here it's describing the types of fractures included in those studies. And you can see the list goes on. This is the number of included studies. I don't know how many they are, but the table goes on. This is all table 1. It continues. It talks about the intervention done to that fracture. So this describes the study intervention. Okay, and again, it also describes the control group. So here in this column, it's describing the intervention and describing the comparator. So as you can see, we already have a description of the population. So this is our P, a description of the intervention, and a description of the comparator, and a description of the outcome. So basically, table 1 describes the PICO of each study. Sometimes it contains more details, like, for example, funding, where the study was performed, in which country. But anyway, we call this the study characteristics table. Then we have table 2, which is the table of study quality. As I told you, assessing the quality of the studies, including in your systematic review, is very important to assess the quality. It's very, very important. So you need to have a separate table where you're going to show us your assessment of the quality of each study. And again, this needs a separate session or perhaps a number of sessions to teach you how to assess the study quality for each type of study design. Then comes the third table, or table 3, which is the table describing the actual results in these studies. This systematic review, it was comparing bone cement with another method of repair in case of metaphyseal fractures. So population was patients with metaphyseal fracture or whatever type of fracture, and the intervention or the type of bone cement, and there was a comparator, let's say whatever, placebo or a form of standard treatment. So what did these patients do when they used the cement in comparison to the control group? So here is the actual result. It's not the description of the outcome. It's the description of what happened to the patient, the actual result. Like, for example, here it talks about the pain. How many patients had pain of a certain degree, about the strength of the grip after the fracture, about the range of motion. Okay, and it's giving us actual numbers. Okay, it's giving us actual measures. These measures that come from multiple studies, these are the measures that come in the very famous diagram, okay, that we are always looking for in any systematic review, what we call the forest plot. Okay, it's how we report or how we summarize diagrammatically our meta-analysis. Here the studies go in rows again, and these are the results. Each row, it lists or reports the results of each study. And the vertical line, we call it here the line of no difference. And this small diamond down, okay, in that diagram, this summarizes the results of all these studies. Okay, so again, we have talked now about the very basic features and the very basic steps of performing systematic review and meta-analysis. So you know where you are going from the first step in your journey. So you know you have 7 steps. Okay, you have a question to ask, a search to perform, you select your studies, you extract data and you appraise the studies, then you summarize data, whether narratively or statistically by doing meta-analysis, then you write your report. Your report is basically like the report of any other research article, but there are special features. One of the special features is the Prisma diagram, which summarizes all the results of your search and of your study selection in multiple or successive stages and the exact number of the studies from where you took your results or you performed data extraction. And after that, you're going to build three sets of tables or three types of tables. First one is for the study characteristics, second is for study quality, and the third one is for the actual results. And if you want to summarize these results in a statistical way, you draw a forced plot. A third diagrammatic feature. Remember, I said three types of tables and I have three types of diagrams. I showed you two diagrams, the Prisma diagram and the forced plot. Now, there is a third one, which is called the funnel plot. I'm not going to discuss it now. It's a bit advanced. It assesses something called publication bias. So again, we're going to talk about it in another session. And with this, I end my session and thank you very much for listening. Bye.